Good evening. Ask any heart or stroke doctor. The sooner they can treat an emergency admission, the better the chances of that patient making a good recovery. The target for an ambulance to reach what are called Category 2 calls, which can include heart attacks and strokes, should be 18 minutes. The latest figures for England show the average was 1 hour and 32 minutes, a record and a very unwelcome one. There were record waits in accident and emergency too. We used to count 4 hours and above as bad. In December, 55,000 people had to wait 12 hours or more, well up on November. Downing Street accepted today that the NHS is under extreme pressure. It could hardly do anything else, but it stressed huge amounts of money have been invested to deal with just such pressure. Pressure all too visible in the faces of A&E staff and, of course, of patients and their families.
Members of staff for 10 o'clock huddle, thank you.
In the A&E department at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Woolwich, the overnight team have just handed over to staff on the day shift. It's a day like any other, very busy, and they're almost full already.
I always thought mornings were quieter. That's not the case, no?
Quieter, but not quiet at the moment.
Right,
so
okay.
I think we've had a chance to move some patients out, but we've still got patients occupying most of the cubicle.
Dr Brooke is expecting up to 80 ambulances to arrive today. He's already opened his overflow areas to get patients in, and I ask if it's possible to care for them there in the best way possible.
In the best way, no, absolutely not. And something we often talk about is the least worst option. So, you know, it's trying to do the best that we can with the facilities and the space that we have.
The least worst option. I mean, how does that make you feel as a consultant?
Terrible. I mean, it's terrible for all the staff. It's extremely demoralising.
But before patients even get here, ambulance delays are also affecting care. A 95-year-old woman who had a fall at home is the next to arrive.
She's been laying on the floor for 3 hours, waiting for an ambulance to, to pick her up.
It looks like she may have to wait here now too.
Yeah, well, we've got to wait. There's not a lot I can do about it.
Leslie's mother may have to be put in an area not usually used for A&E, and the matron here says staffing those areas is always a problem.
Sometimes up to 35–40% shortage, that we have to actually escalate it and get staffing from the ward to come and help us to cover these areas.
When ambulances bring patients in, they would usually come through here to have a rapid assessment, but consultants aren't doing those assessments at the moment because this room is now filled with patients ready to leave A&E and go upstairs to a ward, if only there were any beds for them.
There could be if every patient on this ward was able to be discharged. They're all ready, but are waiting for care packages.
There'll be patients who are waiting to go to a care home placement. There are a couple of patients here who are homeless and have nowhere to go.
I can see all your planning now.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's sort of like placements.
Yeah, we've got a
finding home.
Absolutely. I have the equivalent of three and a half wards worth of patients who aren't currently able to leave the organisation.
To improve flow, the hospital does ensure those leaving are out of their bed early, freeing it up for someone else. Back downstairs, the waiting room in A&E is overflowing. Anyone here has a 10-hour wait to see a clinician. Breeder's daughter had chest pains this morning. They've been sitting here for 5 hours.
I've been talking to them. I said, what's happening? And they went, oh, we're really packed out. We can't do any more. I said, I know. I do understand. I said, but the point is, my daughter could have a heart attack sitting here now. Thank God she ain't. Well, she could have. Do you know what I mean? I want the government to open their eyes and see what is going on in these hospitals. It's a disgrace.
What's happening here at the Queen Elizabeth is not unique. It's mirrored across the country from hospital to hospital and patient to patient. One wonders how long it can continue.
Well, that then is what pressure looks like in the NHS right now. Emily was telling one individual hospital story on one day. But Emily, the figures out today paint a much broader picture.
Yes, they do. And sadly, there is little good news in today's data from NHS England. In fact, many of the statistics break records, but for all the wrong reasons. Ambulance call handlers answered more 999 calls than ever before, more than 1 million in December. But response times were the worst we've ever seen. Those with Category 2 conditions like heart attacks or strokes had to wait on average an hour and a half for an ambulance. The target is 18 minutes, and the waits didn't stop there. Once in A&E, more than 170,000 patients who needed to be admitted had to wait more than 4 hours. In the same month last year, that was 120,000. But it was worse for others. More than 54,000 had to wait more than 12 hours for a bed. And if we put that into perspective, look at this. 10 years ago, there were just 14 patients who waited more than 12 hours. Now, we probably all know why patients can't get a bed quickly. You saw in my report, it's because hospitals are simply too full. Look at the number of people who are there every day with COVID in December. It jumped to an average of just over 7,000. That's more than in December 2021. However, back then, there wasn't any flu, just 33 patients in hospital with that. But an average of nearly 3,000 were taking up beds with flu this December. And it's even worse now. Last week, hospitals had to find room for more than 5,000 flu patients. That's alongside those who are lying in beds, ready to be discharged and can't be. There was an average of 14,000 patients each day last week, and that's another record. But let's end on some brighter news. The waiting list has finally started to come down for the first time since the pandemic. It's dropped to 7.1 million, a fall of about 27,000. Now, the Prime Minister has pledged to cut waiting list. So, Julie, at least that's a promise he is so far keeping.